Good afternoon and welcome everybody.
Sorry now, sorry.
Oh,
Could you sit down?
okay, sit down. I'm delighted to welcome Joe Armstrong, who has kindly driven down from Dublin this morning to be with us
From
today.
Kells.
From Kells,
Kells
sorry,
County
Kells.
Meath, in the
Yes.
wilds of North County Meath.
Yes. So he's got so many credits to his name. I'm just going to read from his book about him. He spent 9 years studying for the Roman Catholic priesthood with the Marist Fathers in Dublin in the 80s. He taught English and religious education in London for 5 years. He's a writer, podcaster and humanist celebrant. His RT Radio 1 documentary, From Belief to Unbelief, was shortlisted for New York Festival's World's Best Radio Awards. A multi-award winning public speaker. Aren't we lucky to have him? He is author of several books and was a weekly columnist with the Irish Times for 7 years. He's married with 2 adult children and he lives in Kells in Ireland.
Kells County Meath.
So the theme for today we're going to talk about is losing religion and finding myself. And we're going to start with extracts maybe from your first book.
Why not?
But before you start, I just want to say that I was really struck by your raw honesty and openness in writing this and sharing in your book. It's about your faith, your doubt, your sexuality, your struggle with celibacy. And so when I had read this book, I was just saying to Joe over lunch earlier, it's like when you're watching a series on Netflix or something and you want to see the next episode as quickly as possible. So I can't wait actually to read the second book after reading the first book. So where should we start?
Well, I think we should start by reading from the first book.
Okay.
So I asked Gill, pardon me, Gill sent me an email just before, and so Gill is in my mind. I asked Gill to choose the passages that she'd like me to read, and she did. And so the first one, which you suggested, this was a letter that I wrote. I kept journals all of my life, right? Which is why I was able to write my memoirs, because your memory is a very unreliable source. But because I'd written contemporaneous journals right through my life, I had it all there, how I was thinking, how I was feeling. And I had letters, I always kept letters. So this was a letter that I sent my Uncle John, and my Uncle John was a priest, a Catholic priest. And I sent this letter to him in 1979, when I was all of 17 years old. 17, not 70, 17.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly embarrassing. And when I was, Gill referred to the RT documentary, and when the production supervisor saw this letter, she said, "Oh, we have to use that." And I said, "No, we can't, it's too embarrassing." But that's all right. Hello, you're welcome. So it's very embarrassing, but it shows, and this is sort of my intention in writing the book, was just to show how I was thinking. Dear Uncle John, 17-year-old Joseph, right? Dear Uncle John, I would like this to be the first letter you receive from Ireland, because he lived in South Africa, after the postal strike. Anybody here old enough to remember the postal strike in 1979?
Yeah.
Went on for months. The first thing I want to tell you, and it's the only thing that's really important, is that I joined the charismatic prayer meeting. A charismatic prayer meeting. And really, Uncle John, it's great. Christ's love is flowing more and more in Ireland through the charismatic renewal. Pockets of Christians are opening up all over the city. Only last night we heard news of a new prayer meeting in Sean McDermott Street. You can here. I'm a dope. I'm from Dublin, right? I can't see it now. Yeah, Sean McDermott Street. Only weeks ago, another in the Mater Hospital. This, along with the many little known parish prayer meetings like Edenmore and Dunny-Carney. I'm from Dunny-Carney, north side of Dublin. And the bigger ones like the airport and Eustace Street. Only in the last few months have we seen the increased numbers of dove badges. If you're in the charismatic renewal at that time, you went around a little dove for the Holy Spirit.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Did you have one?
I know.
You were lucky. Now I've lost where it was. Oh yeah, dove badges, which are seen worn by all sorts of people. Mass, that was boring and dead, is now joyful and alive. The risen Christ is seen so often. Well, Jesus, I don't know where I saw him, but that's what I wrote. 4 weeks ago I joined our parish meeting, and I've been going for months to the one in our school. We have one charismatic priest in our parish, but only last night another priest turned up from our parish. I pray that he will get over his initial discomfort. Please, Uncle John, pray for him too. And for all others that are starting to know not about Christ, but to actually know him. God, this is great. Please, if you have a minute, pray for me too. At present in our parish, we are about 100. In Dundalk, it started at 50. Now it's 1,000. God, I was so excited, wasn't I? Last weekend, there was a major gathering at Knock. Not too far from here, really, is it? Many witnessed to healing. One who was so far gone physically, far gone. Is that a diagnosable condition? He was so far gone physically, had returned an invalid to Ireland to die, and he witnessed to healing. Another was cured of multiple sclerosis. I'd like to see the evidence, but there you go. Our own charismatic priest tells of a man cured of a 20-year-old ankle disorder. I'd say he went to the physio, but anyway. And mental healing spreads like fire. To those of us within the renewal, it's back to the excitement lost and forgotten for centuries. The excitement of the realization of the risen Christ. Whatever happened to the church between then and now? You know, it feels like we're just continuing another chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, as if there's been no time lapse at all. The fruits of the Spirit are flowing. God is alive. Jesus is Lord.
Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful? Somebody walked in here now today, they think this is a prayer meeting. Instead of a human gathering, non-believers. Jesus is Lord. Isn't it wonderful? Oh sure, I always knew with my head. How did I always know with my head? That Jesus was God. How did you always know that, Joe? But anyway, that's for it. But now it's with my heart. I hope I'm not being hypocritical. The enthusiasm, the excitement seems, wait for it, false. Bloody did. It's so long been absent. Let's praise God. Night and day. You walked in here now to be saying, Jesus, they're very religious in there. God bless you. Praise God and right soon. I wrote that when I was 17. That was me.
So that demonstrated your religious fervour at the time.
It did.
And could you tell us what Uncle John meant to you? Why were you writing that letter to him?
Okay, he was a brother of my father, and he was physically huge, and he meant a lot to me. I just, you click with somebody. So I was very fond of him, and he was very fond of me. He had spent I spent 9 years in a seminary. He spent 11 years in a sanatorium because he had TB. And the story of his faith made a huge impact on my life. Because at that time, with TB, once you got it, that was it. There was no cure. So he was basically left in hospital for 11 years. I think he got out once during all of that time. But despite that, he constantly prayed, because he was a religious man. This is Ireland he was born, I think, in probably around about 1919 or even earlier. So, very Catholic Ireland. And his constant prayer was, Lord, make me your priest. And like, he's lying there in a bed with TB and he's not going anywhere. He's never going to be a priest. But anyway, then science came along and they came up with medical solutions to TB. So he had an operation which he had a lung removed and most of the other lungs. So for the rest of his life, he had very little. He was hardly able to breathe. And my memory of him was, when he'd come to us to visit us, he'd stand at the door at night time, and he'd be standing at the door and he'd go, oh, I can't. But he'd stand at the door and he'd go, and be taking these huge big breaths in, just trying to recharge his lungs, you know. So his story seemed to me to be proof of faith of God, because he got better. His prayer was, Lord, make me your priest. And then he had this operation, and it didn't cure him, but it meant he could leave the sanatorium. And he wrote this letter to Archbishop McCann in South Africa, you know, I want to become a priest. And Archbishop McCann in South Africa wrote back and he said, report to the Beta College in Rome, which he did. So he got out of the sanatorium, headed to Rome, studied for the priesthood, and my parents became engaged at his ordination. So that's Uncle John.
Yes. So what attracted you to train as a priest, and in particular to go into do you say Marist or Marist? Marist,
yeah.
Seminary.
They're called Marist because they're a French order, and it was, you know, the Jesuits were the Society of Jesus, and the Marists were the Society of Mary. So in French, Marie is Marie. So they pair Marie, and la Société de Marie. So Marist. And so I like in my mid to late teens, the only thing I wanted to be was to be a priest. I had no interest in doing anything else. I did a pretty good intercert, and then I literally sabotaged my leaving cert so that I wouldn't be, quote unquote, tempted not to be a priest. So I kind of manipulated my own life to make sure I would become a priest. You know, crazy thinking. It just seemed to me to be the most important thing. Like, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? Those kind of questions were what interested me. I was never interested in money. Still am really. But it's nice to, you know, have a roof over your shoulder, you know, and whatever. But I'm not motivated by money. And prestige, fame, none of those things interest me. I could never figure out why people would spend their Sunday afternoon playing golf. I thought, why would you want to be doing that? Do you know? Yeah. But priesthood, it's like, and the idea, you know, as a kid, I watched people queuing. When I was a kid, you'd have everybody went to confession. Like, everybody went to confession. Mm-hmm. And on a Saturday night, you know, the night before Sunday Mass, there'd be queues of people. You go down to confession club. Yeah. And, you know, I was in Dunnicarney Parish, which is a huge church, and Mass, there'd be 7 or 8 Masses on a Sunday. Packed, absolutely packed. The same churches now are, as long as nobody in them. So, at that time, like, I thought, well, you know, the priest is in the confessional, all these people are coming to him, and he seems to know it all. And he seems to have a wise word for them all, or a comforting word for them all, or he can forgive them his sins. It just seemed to me, why wouldn't you want to be a priest? You know. Plus, then I went to the charismatic renewal. So all of my background was, you know, my mother was very religious, crazily religious. Although after that letter, you're thinking I was crazily religious too. So I had 2 cousins who were studying for the priesthood. It was just a huge influence, and it was Ireland. I was born in 1962, so it was a big thing in Ireland to be a priest. Priest, doctor, teacher, that was sort of it. And I said, I'll go for the best of them all, I'll be a priest. And then Marists, I had heard that the Marist seminary that there was a lot of stuff happening there, So that kind of
What kind
excitement.
of stuff?
Well, there were loads of students studying for the priesthood. So some of the seminaries were pretty dry and, and some of them didn't have that many seminarians. But it just sounded like that was a happening kind of place because there were loads of people. And they seemed to be clued into the charismatic renewal, which I thought was the future for the church. So it seemed exciting. And I felt that's the place to go. And then this priest called Larry Duffy had a huge influence on my life. He was a charismatic priest, and I kind of thought he was just like somebody who walked straight out of the Bible. He was so impressive, and I thought, so he's just like Jeremiah, God is talking directly to Larry Duffy. Yeah. That's what I thought. We used to call him the laser beam. He was a brilliant preacher, and so I'm not going to read it out because it's going to take forever, but the passage I might have read out. At the end of it, he's telling me, he's praying over me because I've told him I want to be a priest, and he's praying over me and he's saying, many souls will be saved by your ministry. And this is like, in my mind, the guy who was a direct line to God telling me that many souls will be saved by my ministry. Away I go.
So we'll come to that passage in a minute, but you write very early on in your time in Milltown, you write about your need for intimacy and your struggle with celibacy and your doubts. But it seems that from a very early time you were considering about whether to carry on or to leave. But each time you decided to leave, you got persuaded to stay.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, that became, so the intimacy thing, so the Marists, all Catholic priests aren't married. So there's secular priests and then there's religious priests. But if you're a member of a religious order, you also have a vow of celibacy. You don't just promise to your bishop that you won't get married. Yeah. You have a vow of celibacy. And I was kind of in the Marists when I got a shock. Because at the time, people were talking that maybe in the near future, married priests will be allowed. So that sounded pretty cool to me. And I remember sitting at this lecture one day and the priest was talking to us about celibacy within the Marists. And he said, even if tomorrow the Pope said the priests could get married, we couldn't get married because we have a vow of celibacy. And I'm kind of going, what? You never told me that before I joined the Marists. I was horrified, because I thought celibacy was like a necessary, as I understood it, part of the package. You couldn't be a priest without being celibate, but maybe in the near future we could get married, and so that was a shocker. And by then I was already I was a novice, or I was first professed or something like that.
So would you like to read that next passage?
Okay, so the second area, do you mean the one about when I decided to leave?
It's on 60.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 years in, I've struggled with this, and it's so hard to choose to leave, but I struggled, and eventually I decided, right, that's it, I'm going. So, it took 5 years. Slow learner, penny takes a long time to drop, right? So 5 years in, so this is kind of a key thing. So I'm going to read this one. I'll stop talking, I'll just read. So this is episode 60. My decision when it came on the 15th of December 1985, so now 23, in the middle of the night, a sleepless night, was definitive. As a boy of 23, I deemed it the loneliest decision of my life. After months of heightened anguish and discussions with the superior, my spiritual director, confessor, confreres, and friends at UCD, attuned to myself, I weighed the evidence and I made my solitary choice, surging up from my gut. I tried to imagine God loving me into being in my mother's womb, loving me for who I am, not for what I did. I had learned that true love is one's presence with another person rather than doing things for them. I needed to appreciate myself for who I was, not for what I did. As love can't be won, why was I in a seminary? If life wasn't about helping the needy, if those who did that might be motivated out of their selfish need to be needed, it changed everything. And there were no brownie points for sacrifice. The paradigm I'd grown up with of self-sacrificial love needed radical revision. I couldn't think of anyone who was a priest or religious for other than delusional or selfish motives. I'd seen enough of religious life to opine in my journal, scratch beneath the thin veneer of community life, and you will find the alienation of each individual within it. This is clearly 5 years on. I wouldn't have written that before I joined. At college, I warmed to Verena, girl at UCD, anytime I was near her. I wanted to kiss her when she touched me, hugged me, or came up close to me. Whenever we parted after a few minutes together, loneliness pained me. It was around this time that my history lecturer, Dr. Michael Richter at UCD, urged me to take my chance in the world. Take my chance in the world. Here was a caring, intelligent, authoritative adult suggesting an altogether different, responsible choice than the one presented to me in the seminary as the best one. Commit to yourself, he said to me. It is you who is important. Make yourself your priority. The first time I ever heard an adult say that to me. I dreamt of leaving the Marists. When I woke up, I could see myself going. Next night, I had another dream in which I journaled, I'm running down a lane heading home. I mused, quote from the journal, God is not a vindictive God. He won't insist that I become a priest to be happy. He won't make me miserable outside if I choose to leave. It's an idea put into my head as a child. Later that day, there was a festive Christmas atmosphere in Grafton Street. Sipping coffee, I waited for my mother and sister in the packed Paris Court Townhouse Centre. A pianist began to play and the music soothed me, lifting my mood. Then the full-voiced choir of the Glasnevin Musical Society blasted out Joy to the World, Joy to the World, da, 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 da. And my angst had dissipated by the time my mother and sister arrived. I even managed to tolerate my mother's obsessive talking. I asked her to inquire about getting a grant from Guinness's, because my dad worked in Guinness's, or had worked in Guinness's before he died, for a master's degree. If she interpreted this request as she might, she didn't show it. During reconciliation service that night, I went to confession out of habit. I didn't feel contrite for my sins, quote unquote, and I couldn't have cared less if I hadn't received absolution. The sacrament had become an empty ritual. I sat in the chapel and I imagined telling my confreres I owed it to them. Then I thought I might write something in their honour. Maybe this is it. I loved the place. It had been my home. I loved these men, well, most of them. I wondered how I would go. Would I be driven home in a house car, or would my sister collect me? I no longer needed to be a priest. I had to realise that I was loved and lovable. It was a breakthrough. I journaled, I don't have to be here to be happy. It's a choice, not a necessity. That night I couldn't sleep. My mother was inquiring about a grant for a master's degree. My university fees were paid. I had a medical card. Hopefully the Marists would give me some money. I needed to get down to study. My life's future shape would depend on it. The tears came like a river, bucketing, just getting emotional reading this, bucketing down my face, unknotting my stomach. As I passed through that threshold, knowing I had to leave, I could do no other. Still the tears came. I was heaving now, terrified and relieved at the death of my dream for the priesthood and stepping into the unknown. I had decided, and I needed to tell someone. As my director, Father Dennis Green, was away, I knocked on the superior's door in the middle of the night, but his bedroom was on the far side of his office. He was asleep and he could not hear me. So that's a huge moment, obviously, in my life and in the book. Question to the audience: 5 years in, did I leave? No. So despite that profound moment of personal realization that I had to leave, I didn't. Because about 2 weeks later, on the 30th of December, a good friend who had joined and left a convent called to see me. We had what I regarded in my journal as a most significant conversation about vocation, happiness, God's will, self-will, and my proposed leaving. I told her I was not a very good marist. And if you read the book, you know why. Given I had imagined at times that she and I could have a future together, I was surprised that she said that to leave involved less courage than to stay. I also met another girl I knew. She suggested I wasn't missing out on all that much by being in the Marists. None of the girls in her rented accommodation was going with anybody. It's yourself that counts, she said. A relationship is only possible when you are at peace with yourself. On New Year's Eve, this is 2 weeks after I decided to leave, I journaled. To stay involves daily effort, suffering, sin, dissatisfaction, crises, some difficult relationships in community, daily toil. To leave implies a supposed freedom, which is not so, material and sexual gratification which fails to satisfy, intellectual freewheeling. You lot are intellectual freewheelers. Which is untrue, and irresolute will. We are only given one vocation in life. A gap exists between my will and what I must admit I deep down believe to be God's will for me. Cringe. One answer is to cease to believe in my vocation. The other is to work humbly with my questions, doubts, disbeliefs, sins, trying to conform my will to God's. My life is at breakdown. I must reconstruct it. A benefit of the crisis I journaled was I am now learning to reveal my needs to others. My week at home was a disaster. Things were never worse with my mother. She was a difficult woman. I journaled on the 3rd of January. Escaping early to Milltown, I found Tony Ward, who was a priest. He had handwritten Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, for me. So, encouraging me to take the road less travelled by. My Uncle Jack, a stranger to subtlety and a devout Catholic, had posted me John Greenleaf Whittier's poem, Don't Quit. But I knew that on that crucial night in mid-December I journaled, I simply did not believe in my vocation. I hadn't got one. That was the whole self-realisation. The temptation to just slip back into daily living is very present, but at what cost? My confessor, the guy you make confession to, joined the fray. He said, "It's a wrong decision to leave. I believe you have a vocation. And the very least you should do is to put it out of your head until you've finished your BA this summer." By the 7th of January, I deemed my self-realisation of mid-December a mistake. And what I haven't read out, because it sort of happened between the two extracts, is my spiritual director, whom I loved, Dennis Green, a lovely guy, absolutely loved him. But he totally, what's the word? I know somebody who's read this has said that he betrayed me. I don't know if I would use that word, but when I told him that night, or whenever he came back from wherever he was, that I had decided to leave, at first he said, "Well, look, you've wrestled with this for long and hard, and I respect your decision." And I'm thinking, yes, this is much easier than I thought it was going to be. And then he went off and he talked to the superior, and he was gone a long time. And when he came back, he had totally changed his tune. And it was, oh, wait another month, and you know, this is the Society of Mary, the Maris Fathers. They're a work of God. You can't just be
Go on another retreat.
Yeah, all that. And I remember thinking at the time, how can you say that? You've clearly got that from the superior, because his authentic reaction was totally different. And then he comes back and then he right up to Christmas, he was the Society of Mary is a work of God, and I was just getting all of this stuff on me, and I wasn't strong enough 5 years in, age 23, to resist it. So, you know, the girl who'd been in the convent and all of that. And I changed my mind. I couldn't believe it. I changed my mind. And I wasn't, but when I finally left, which was after 9 years, the nice thing is that I was then strong enough to resist all of that stuff. So I didn't care by then if the Pope himself had come in and knelt down in front of me and said, Joe, don't go, I would have said, get a life, I'm going.
So how do you think you went from having such a strong vocation to, first of all, deciding not to become a priest, and then coming to not believe in God even?
Big jump.
It's a big jump. The kernel of it was the experience of In My Gut, which is where I got the title. Do you want me to read that out?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of the climax of the book. So 9 years, so 4 years after I decided to leave and been persuaded to stay, obviously the wrong decision. So I've been called a diaconate. So you're made a deacon before you're made a priest, and I've been called a diaconate. I got a date for the diaconate and all that kind of stuff. And I've got the collywobbles, and I'm thinking there's something wrong. I don't feel comfortable about this, all of that kind of stuff. So eventually I say, look, I want to do counselling. So I ask, can I see a counsellor? So this is somebody outside of the Marists, and it was a woman. So usually I'm, you know, a priest being directed by a priest, but this is a woman. She's not a Marist. She's not invested in me becoming a priest or a Marist priest. And so I went to her, and she was brilliant. I had so many insights. 20 sessions I had with her. Anyway, so that's just the context. So I'm seeing this and to this day I don't know her name. So in the book I call her Ms. D, because I think her name began with a D, but I don't know what her name was. Crazy, but there we go. I went out with my sister. This is 1989, 9 years in. And this is April of 1989, and I would leave in June. I went out with my sister for a drink on the night of Friday the 28th of April 1989, happy to have acted on my decision not to attend the weekend for senior Marist students. We met a friend of mine from UCD, a lovely, fine-looking fellow. He joined us upon my invitation. After drinks, we went to a nightclub. Linda, a friend of my sister, said to me, don't be a priest, be a waste. And next day I journaled, was in fine form. This day just ended. I studied and felt good about myself, appreciating that we become ourselves by acting on our decisions. The following day I skipped Sunday Mass. Yee-hoo! Do you know what? I was 27. First time in my life I was skipping Mass. Do you know? And when you're studying with priesthood, it's a huge thing to skip Sunday Mass. My second time to do so. I went for a cycle instead and enjoyed it. There you go. After a luxurious hot bath, I went with my friends Tom and Brendan to a Maura O'Connell concert at the Olympia. She was magnificent. Remember Maura O'Connell? Is she still around? She's brilliant. I loved her. The audience singing along with gusto. Here was life being lived to the full. A vibrant alternative universe to my preoccupation with religious concepts and sacrifice. On the 1st of May, I absented myself from Mass and morning prayer. I was getting really bad. I was depressed though and did little study. I rang home to talk to my sister, but my mother answered. She spoke about a guy who pulled out just before diaconate, as if oblivious to my situation. My journal records my reaction as rage, but doesn't record if I let it show. At Spiritual Direction on the 2nd of May, I discussed avoiding Mass, my critical view of papal teachings, and my rejection of Catholic dogmas like the Immaculate Conception of Mary, a theological contrivance so that Jesus, supposedly divine, could be born of a woman unstained by original sin. I also found fundamental doubts about the sacramental and clerical systems of the Church. I also had fundamental doubts. She wondered if next time I might be closer to a decision. I journaled, opting for what's safe isn't working so well. I feel I'm turned inside out. Now, when I wrote that down, I feel I'm turned inside out, I thought that was a really painful thing, if you're turned inside out. At first, the image spoke of my inner anguish and pain, but then I saw it as a powerful metaphor for my nascent self, my emerging self. Emerging from within, I was growing in personal integrity, becoming my authentic self, more comfortable in my skin. Next day, the 3rd of May, I had another liberating image of walking through glass unscathed, a breakthrough and a breakout. I felt it physically through my body, releasing tension from my gut. My self-imposed religious restrictions fell away, yielding shard by shard. I stepped through, crossing the boundary of my self-confinement, discovering the glass was a mirage. That sensation encapsulated my liberation, shattering the man-made boundaries of religion and of my mind. I was crossing a threshold, discarding a mask and a shell, stepping into personal freedom. I went to the careers office in UCD and explored becoming a writer, journalism, editing and publishing. I couldn't sleep that night due to existential questions cascading through my mind. All options remained open, doing the All Hallows course next year, choosing leave of absence, retaining my identity as a Marist, financial security should I need it, and the option of returning to the Marists, doing the higher diploma in education so I would be trained to teach as a security for me and not a waste of time should I stay in the Marists, looking for a job in publishing in Ireland or London, or temporary employment with an eye to journalism. During counselling with Ms. D, but for my journal it's not clear to me which session it was, it might have happened earlier or later in my process, she pushed me to decide the fundamental choice that faced me. Do you believe you have a vocation? She asked. I could still read both interpretations of my life. I don't know, I said. Get out of your head. What does your gut say? She asked. My gut. After all these years, was I to wager my life on my gut? Discarding other people's opinions, and the priest who told me you have a vocation. Just lost my page. And ignoring my previous decisions to stay and any theological argument, decide solely on my gut. She asked, in this moment, right now, in this moment, what does your gut say? The consequences for me couldn't have been starker. My vocation, identity, work, financial security, my past, present and unknown future, all to be determined by my gut. I became aware of my belly and my vital organs churning within. I don't know, I cried in despair. I know it's hard, but try. What does your gut say? I don't know. Right now, she persisted. The clock ticked, and out of the silence I answered, no. I whispered from my gut. To be clear, what are you saying? In my gut, I don't believe. And it was the moment that changed my life. My Berlin Wall between head and gut was breached. And I know you're a woman who believes deeply in the gut.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because some of you may know that my work as a biodynamic therapist, we understand the importance of the gut and the brain, the gut-brain axis, and the fact that the messages come, it's a two-way channel, so you can get messages from the gut to the brain as well as from the brain to the gut. And in fact, if you realise that I think it's 90% of the serotonin in your body is produced in the gut, the lining of the gut.
And what does the serotonin do?
So it's a feel-good factor. It's a feel-good factor. Where it's such a wonderful description of this barrier between the gut and the brain breaking down, and you came to really understand and know from yourself. So it's wonderful.
And I remember that moment so clearly. And it was so scary. Because intellectually, the problem was I could see both sides. You know, I can see, there are really brainy people out there who remain priests because they see a theological, rational, in their view, reasoning which makes sense to them. And I could see that. But I could also see the atheistic, non-believer part of me, which I would now kind of think of as my adult self. That doesn't need to believe in an imaginary friend and an afterlife which doesn't exist, other than the fact that my cells, my body will become something else when I die. That battle was always going on for 9 years.
It reminds me of The Hound of Heaven by Francis Thompson. Have you heard it? Yeah, I'm sure you've
heard the title.
I fled him down the nights and down the days, I fled him down the arches of the years. It reminds me of that, the feeling, the pull to do and not wanting to go. You know, that feeling of fighting. I went through it myself when I was in the convent, of course, naturally. The priest would come to give you retreats, and I would tell you think about it. And naturally you would think, am I being called? And this is why I was sent to college, Loretto, to be nun. And I remember fighting with that, saying, I don't really want to be a nun, but maybe I should be.
How long were you in for?
Pardon?
How long were you a nun?
I was never a nun.
But you were in the convent?
I was at school.
Oh, at school. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I was a boarder in the school. So this is why when the priests would come to give retreats and that, they would ask you to think about it. And we did. But I rejected it.
But it's such a difference between people can be tormented with this recycling of trying to work things out all in the head, whereas when you trust the wisdom of the body, you get the clear message. You know?
Yeah.
But it's like I know I'm repeating myself a bit, but it was just so scary for me to make that choice. Am I seriously going to, resolve this being on the fence for 9 years? Am I going to jump on the basis of my gut? It was so scary. It was utterly scary, because all of those things, my identity and all those things, were all at stake. That was so risky. Why would you do it? And in your gut, right now, not tomorrow. And it was a breakthrough, and it was my Berlin Wall. And of course, Berlin Wall did come down in 1979. It was the same year,
But that's what you said about being indoctrinated when you were a child. We were all, I don't know about Gill, but we were indoctrinated as children from the age of 4 up. And it was around us everywhere we could. It wasn't long afterwards. I must be nearly 40 before it dawned on me, there can't be a God, there can't be an afterlife. And and I'm wondering why that indoctrination is still going on in schools today. And that's my one big book that I'm saying about that I taught for 17 years. You know, I taught infants. I indoctrinated children. Mea culpa,
and that's a huge concern for me too, you know, because when you've been indoctrinated and then you realise it's all bull, and I believed it, and look what, like, my 20s.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you know, it's not a waste of time. I was asking good questions and I've come up with answers. And, you know, it's not a waste of time, but it's happening again today. Kids being initiated to believe in baloney.
Yeah.
And happily, a lot of them won't take it seriously, but some of them will. And they'll make life choices based on it. And like, I know nuns, priests, pastors who have spent their entire lives devoted to this imaginary God that doesn't exist. And then they get to a point in their life where they're too old, or they feel they're too old to chuck it in. Because what can they do now? Like, who'd have me now?
Yeah, you were telling me, you know, it took you 9 years when you were telling me about somebody, you know, who took 29 years before he left.
Yeah, and there are people who take even more, you know. Yeah. No, my good friend, a very good friend of mine, he was my best man at my wedding, and he took a little longer than me, but he's a great guy.
So, when you decided to use your journal entries to write a book, did you already know when you started that there might be 2 volumes or even more, possibly?
I didn't know. You see, the whole thing started, I did an RT documentary, which is just 40 minutes, a radio documentary, Doc on One. You can still listen to it if you want. It's called From Belief to Unbelief. So you can go onto the RT, you know, Doc on One, and you can. So it was 40 minutes, and it was myself. There were 4 of us, and then the production, Nicoline Greer, who was guiding me to do it, she said, it's too many people, we have to get it down to 3 people. So can you imagine, like, trying to get one story down to 40 minutes? We were trying to get 3 stories down to 40 minutes. So the effect of that, and that was the one that, you know, got recognised from New York festivals. But I realised after I'd done that, you know, I can't tell the story in 40 minutes on the radio. I need to write a book. So that's how the first book, In My Gut, was born. At, you know, my early life, right up through the seminary and the insights and so on. And then I realised that didn't tell the whole story, because people will come up to me and they say, well, what happened after that? That only takes us to age 27. So that's why I wrote the second book, which is, by the way, is being launched next Thursday. It's sort of a new book, been launched next Thursday. So if you would like to attend, it's a Zoom launch, so you can attend from wherever you are and log into the Zoom call. So if you want to attend the Zoom of this launch next Thursday at 8 o'clock, how do you do that? Do you have the...
It's up there.
Oh, it's there.
So how to register for that Zoom launch is up there.
Brilliant.
And also, if you want to join...
Does that give a long, complicated Zoom?
No, that's...
You just send me an email. Yeah, that's it. Send me an email, and then I'll send you the invitation.
That's it. And then if you want to see Joe's blog, is...
Thank you. Yeah, I write a Substack, which is a blog,
yeah.
right? Almost every Friday.
So the details of those are there.
Thank you. It's called Joe the Human, not Joe the Humanist. Joe the Human, right? Joe the Human. So it's a Substack. So if you're interested and if you'd like to sign up to it, it's free. Substack also try to get money out of people, but so you can just do it for free, right? And 99.9% do it for free. So please do it for free, right? And just allow for people to subscribe for free. So Joe the Human, just Google it, Joe the Human Substack, SUBSTACK, and that'll also give you all the details for logging on to the launch next Thursday.
So I'm looking forward to hearing about and reading the next stage of your process.
Yes, we're the love of my life. We're now married 31 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, one of the questions you asked me, Gill, was, you know, why did I? One of the reasons I joined the seminary was because my self-esteem was so bad as a an adolescent, 17-year-old, I thought, sure, well, no woman would ever want to marry me. That's one of the reasons. And so I genuinely thought, even in Even Marriage, I had no idea that any woman would ever actually want to marry Joe Armstrong. And hey presto, one did. And she's a magnificent woman. She has changed my life. And by the way, everything I've done in life that I'm proud of, she's been involved in. I mean, the books couldn't have been written without her. She writes, I write, but she'll look over everything and think, you're going to say that, that's gone. Or you could rewrite that better. So she's super. Our house, our kids, all that kind of stuff. My happiness. All down to my missus.
So would you like to tell us a bit about what we can expect in the book that you're launching this week?
Okay, so in that one, the second one, by the way, they're in the same series, so it's called Losing Religion, Finding Myself. They're available on Amazon, right? Amazon. And you can buy them as a Kindle edition, which is the cheapest version. I think it's about $9.99 or something. And then the paperback edition is about 15 quid. And then there's a hardback edition, which I'm really proud of, because, they're kind of pretty, but they're expensive. I only got this for me, and I got the same for me, Mrs. So that's all. I'm the author.
It feels completely different.
Oh yeah, I'm really proud of them. I mean, the hardback is gorgeous to have. So, remind me what you asked me. What's in the next book?
Yes, tell us about, because we're up to, in this book,
Me.
You've actually
jump.
really decided
I take the
that
jump.
you're definitely going to leave.
So I leave, and that's it. And people are saying, what happened then? So this sort of tells you what happened during the next six years. So the first thing was I did leave, but I actually went out on leave of absence. Gave me a safety net. If it didn't work out, go back. I had 2 years leave of absence, and in fact I only needed one. And I wrote to Matt and said, bye-bye, after a year. And then I was looking for the love of my life, and I had various adventures in the art of all of that. And eventually I found my dear love, Ruth. Isn't Ruth a lovely name?
It is a lovely
Isn't
name.
it a lovely name?
And
Anybody here called Ruth?
you pointed out to me that in this book, the lake
heart.
in the background is in the heart shape.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And actually, this has taken me before I met her. But there is. Sorry, camera. I'm showing the audience. But there's a heart, a lake here.
Oh, it's shape for heart.
It's in the shape for heart. See it?
Yeah.
And I only came across this picture in recent years. Ruth's sister had it, and I saw it and I said, I'm having that. So I acquired this beautiful photograph, which is now adorning the front of my second memoir.
Where is the lake?
It's in an island off Greece. So it's a famous island off Greece. So she went off with the Girdles. She was a teacher, and she taught in Newhall School in near Chelmsford in England, in Essex. And anyway, she went off with the girls, and she had that picture taken.
Beautiful.
So it's a gorgeous picture, and she's a gorgeous person. And do you love me life?
Where did your children go to school?
Oh God, that's a long story. I was
it
involved.
a Catholic school or an non-denominational school?
Well, it's a long story because there wasn't an educate together school. So I was one of the founding parents of Navan Educate Together School. But there's another book involved in that, I can tell you. But it wasn't there at first, so they did start off in local Catholic schools. And then we set up the Educate Together School, but it's a long...
I have a grandson of 7 and first Holy Communion is on the way. So he's full of prayers and stuff. So
it's horrendous.
His mother is of the same opinion as myself, so there's pressure there,
Yeah,
Here,
there is
not
pressure.
great pressure, but he would like, obviously, to make his communion one of these.
It's very interesting because I met a couple who don't believe themselves, and they went out of the country when the first communion was happening, and then it came to the confirmation, and they thought they'd let their son decide, and he decided he wanted to go ahead with it.
Yeah.
So then they had to have the priest come into their house to give him instruction before he could have
Was he
confirmation.
baptised?
Sorry?
Had he been baptised as a baby?
No, you see, he had to go. He
So he
hadn't
had to
been.
go and do all
So he had to go and do all that before he could have his confirmation. But they let him decide. But it's a difficult one as a parent.
It'll be a similar situation now because they're not two kids are baptised, you know. Thankfully it's another year to go, but
It's a way of manipulating people into the faith. You know, it really is. It's scandalous.
My children started in London, so they weren't baptised and they didn't go to religious school, but we moved home when they were 11 and 10. I moved home, and the first day at the school, it was Catholic school in Sligo, and the first day I said, right, now, we're not religious, and they said, oh, it's a very important year because it was 6th year and it was confirmation, and I was like, right, and there was a lot of time would be spent on that, and I said, well, do you know, if she really wants to do it, I wouldn't stop her, but she'd have to do all the other bits first. And then she said, I could put her doing Irish, and I said, great. So she was able to catch up with the Irish, while the others were doing all the religious bits.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're trying hard enough to solve the problem of children being indoctrinated. Parents, I'm sure the majority of young parents now bringing their children to school don't want their children in the religious class. But when they say, I want them to be opt out, they're not sent to a different room, they're sent to the back of that class, which isn't right, because they're still listening to what the teacher is saying. And I have a friend who has children go to school, and the little boy, she didn't have him baptised, they were atheists, and she asked the head teacher, could he be excused from the religious class? They said, sorry, we don't have the accommodation for that. He can just sit at the back of the class. So he comes home from school one day and said to the mother, Mom, the teacher said that God made me. And he was upset. And the mother said, no, we made you. So how is that child exactly? Well, the teacher says one thing, the mother says another. I think it's completely wrong, and there should be where there's a will, there's a way. There should be a way of finding a place for those children. They can go to teachers who are teaching the children with learning difficulties. All those primary schools, they have extra teachers in. I'm sure there would be a way of sending the children to it, and a teacher that's into a room. It could be arranged with a will.
Yeah.
It's also a way of manipulating teachers.
yes.
You know, teachers have to have this Catholic certificate, or whatever. Or there are so many Catholic schools in the country that if you don't have this, you're reducing your possibilities professionally. You know, and then in turn, then they have to go along and either fool themselves or fool others into thinking that they believe it, and then in turn indoctrinate another whole generation.
Maybe we could hear a bit from your second book,
Sure.
and then we can open up after we've heard about Saved by a Woman. We can open up the floor to discussion again afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. So this is So I've set my eye. I've literally seen Ruth for the first time, and I'm trying to find an excuse to go back to Newhall School to see her again. So it was Easter, and let me just read it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So, okay. By Good Friday, the eve of my 30th birthday, I had arrived at Newhall for the Easter Triduum. You know, Holy Saturday, Sunday, or Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday. Ruth is lovely, I journaled. I enjoyed eating with her. Sister Stephanie, Newhall was run by a Catholic congregation called, wait till you hear this, the Canonesses of the Holy Sepulchre. Now try saying that with a few gin and tonics on you. But anyway, they're a lovely, lovely congregation, very fond of them, and but quite a name, the Canonesses of the Holy Sepulchre. So I enjoyed eating with her. Sister Stephanie, lovely woman, put us sitting together. I wanted to touch Ruth. I enjoyed the dance of our eye contact, our conversation, our fun and laughter. I might suggest to Ruth that we meet sometime next week, or go for a hike, or ramble. I'm still that alga on the water, like alga. Except I see it more positively now. I had this image of myself as being rudderless on the sea, just being pushed this way and that. I see it more positively now, having thought about it and shared it. I can see it as my essential self, as the one piece of me free of falseness. And next bit shows, I was still thinking in terms of God and religion, as part of me made by God. And it is closer to the water than when I imagined myself in a big boat or ship, closer even than when I thought of myself as paddling in a solitary canoe. Sister Stephanie thought I seemed open and free, and she sensed my anger and hurt. 4 years since I've done a retreat. 3 years since I went out on leave of absence. 2 years since I decided to leave the Marists. And just a little over a year since receiving dispensation from my vows. I thoroughly enjoyed the meal and Mass tonight. I had a beautiful moment with Ruth. We were alone in her flat around midnight on a Holy Saturday. She offered me a biscuit from a packet of chocolate biscuits. It was her present to me on my 30th birthday. That tiny act, my best ever birthday gift, felt somehow like sealing the deal with chocolate. She knew I was interested in her, and by that tiny gesture in that moment, she communicated that she was interested in me too. At 2:40 a.m. that morning, alone in my bedroom at Newhall, I journaled, "A great Easter. I'm so glad I did a retreat at Stanbrook and the Triduum here at Newhall. It has been time, quality time, very well spent. P.S. Ruth." When I returned to Ilford, where I was living, I told Ken all about Ruth. He reached for a CD of the Waterboys and selected and played one track for me. A Man is in Love.
Putting it away, I thought you were not going to read some more things out of there.
Oh, well, I could, but... How are we doing at time?
What is the time?
It's 3:05. They'd be protesting. They'd be saying, "Let us go. He's talked for long enough."
Would you like to hear more, or would you like just to ask questions and comments?
Any more opinions from people?
I think they've tolerated
What do you
it long
think?
enough.
A bit more reading.
More
A bit
reading?
more?
Yes.
More reading. We take a vote.
Who would like more reading? Who would like to open up the floor? Well, there's not many people saying anything much. Let's just have one more. Do you get to a stage here where you actually don't believe in God? Does that come into this book? Or?
It's fascinating. Like that experience of, my God, I don't believe. It literally has taken me a lifetime to unpack that. Because despite that moment of realization, I don't believe in any of it. And it didn't just mean my vocation. I didn't believe any of it. Afterlife, Catholic Church, any God, any religion, it was all BS. But still, as you've heard, I'm still using the language of religion a few years later. It's really hard to unpack that thinking. So, no, it's taken me a lifetime, which is why it'll probably take me another book even after this one.
Comes down to what the Jesuit says, give me the child when I'm 7 years old.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
It's a big wrench to have to do it.
Yeah, so you have to rethink, because you were like it kind of warps your brain how you think, because you're taught things as fact which aren't true. And then you have to rethink it all, and it's like this web of going through your brain, and you have to say, oh no, that isn't true anymore. So,
how did your parents take it when you decided to leave definitively?
my dad had died, so it was only my mother. My mother was a difficult woman. She was inscrutable. in fact, to be fair to her, she took it a lot better than, some of the priests whom, I would have expected more from.
Because at that time, to have a priest in the family was...
Yeah, at that time, but kind of my time was the 1980s, right? I joined in 1980, I left in 1989. I know, like this book has, I've had people contact me who spent any time in seminary, including people who spent time in seminary maybe 20 years before I did. They had a totally different experience than I did. Like, for them, my experience was really liberal and really avant-garde and so on. Some of them had that period of time where it was such a shame to leave. You were a spoiled priest if you left.
I joined the Augustinians in 58.
Oh, really?
And I left in 61. 63, sorry, 63.
I was
And
born
it was
in
very difficult.
Yeah, it would have been very different. Very different. And would you have felt that kind of shame?
Shame, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was afraid to go to my parents. I come back to London. I was in Spain for a few years, studying there. So I came back to London, and it was with great trepidation that I came back to Ireland to break the word. Well, they knew I'd left, but that to actually encounter them was difficult.
Yeah, and like your experience was very different than mine, but there were still remnants of that by my time.
Yeah.
Like, I was told when I was leaving, I was told, tell nobody. And I, like, to be fair to them, I'm trying to be fair to them, perhaps they thought, well, he's going on a leave of absence, maybe he'll be back, and if he tells everybody he's leaving, it'll be more awkward for him if he comes back. That might have been their thinking. But I actually found that really hard, because the guy who drove me to the airport, I was going off to teach Spain for 2 months that summer, did not know that I was going out on leave of absence. The Mars priest, whom I respected, a really nice guy, he didn't know, and I'd been told, don't tell people. So I found that really, really hard. And in a sense, one of the reasons I wrote this book is because when you take final profession, which I had done, I'd take my final vows. So as far as the Mars were concerned, I was there for life. And, they were committed to me for life as well. But that was a public thing. My relatives were at that. My family were there. And yet when I left, I was told, tell nobody. And I in a sense, this is well, hang on a bit. I'm not ashamed of choosing to leave because I don't believe it, And so maybe writing a book for me, part of the thing was, well, this is my public act to say, I left for a good reason. I don't believe it. Pretty good reason. And it's a public statement. And I won't be go away quietly, no telling anybody.
So rather than bringing shame on the family, you can be proud of yourself that you had the courage to do that.
Yeah, and my mother, again, to be fair to her, she did say that to me.
So you, along the way, had dreams of being a writer. So how is it to be here now and to have achieved all you have achieved in terms of writing?
Yeah, it's lovely. I went into teaching for 5 years, and I was a good teacher, but I knew it wasn't my vocation. I knew it wasn't what I really wanted to do. So I had a very similar dynamic starts again. I'm now, instead of being in the priesthood, I'm now teaching, but what I really want to be doing is writing. So I again had that, I was up on the fence, and will I leave and will I not? So eventually I did the second, but this book is a spoiler if I tell you how it ends. No, maybe it is.
I'm dying to hear more of it.
I just read another bit. But yeah, that was an issue. What piece will I read? There's humour. Let me find a little bit of humour. There's lots of humour, I think. There's the birth of my son. I could read a bit of that.
That'd be lovely.
Will I read a bit of the birth of my son?
That'd be lovely.
Okay. So this is in 1994, December 1994. So Joe, it's almost there. it's nearly talking to me. So this is done as a dialogue. So if I say Joe, it's because I'm talking, right? It's almost there. It's nearly talking to me. Senior midwife, right, you've got to give me one more good last push. Otherwise, we're going to have to put something there. Ruth, oh no. Senior midwife, just go for it. Concentrate on pushing down. Midwife, sorry, if this is bringing back bad moment memories to any women here who've had a baby, just tell me and I'll shut up. Shall I proceed? Okay. Ruth, no, it gives me something to hold. Midwife, do you want to get rid of that mask out of your hands? So she's holding a gas mask. Ruth, no, it gives me something to hold. Midwife, we don't want any energy going in there. We want it all to go down into your butt, all of it. Joe, it's so far out. Come on, darling. Senior midwife, go on, come on, come on. She says, yes. Senior midwife, come on. Joe, keep it coming, yes. Senior midwife, go on. Joe says, yes, midwife. He's coming. That's lovely. Keep it coming. Ruth, I can't. Senior midwife, listen to me. One more hard push and you can go. Do it for me. Come on. Go on. You're doing fine. Ruth with a high-pitched exclamation. Ah! Joe, go on, darling. It's really beautiful. Ruth, fuck! Our only time, by the way, because I've been slagging her and waiting for her to say it. And she finally said it. Senior midwife, give it a push, Ruth. Midwife, the head's out. Senior midwife, you gotta push. Ruth, oh Jesus, it hurts so. Oh. Midwife, it's exactly 8 o'clock. Ruth, it's a boy. I'm getting all emotional. It's a boy, my son. He's such a little thing. Well done, Ruth. He's fine. Senior midwife, a bit slow, because he's male. She was so funny. Joe, hey. Senior midwife, congratulations. That was an awful slog, wasn't it? The next one won't be anything like that, though. Ha! Did you use forceps, senior midwife? No, dear. We just shouted at you. You did it all yourself. What are you going to call him, this baby? Ruth, John. And then I say, John Michael Armstrong. Senior midwife, look. Ruth holding the baby. Ah, how are you? You're nice and big. And then to me, are you all right? My wife thinking of me, she's just given birth. Senior midwife, you're a wonderful woman. What are you, Ruth? A wonderful woman. And I repeated, what are you? I'm a wonderful woman. Joe, you're a wonderful mother. Hang on, and I'll learn to hold Daddy, the baby. He looks like me dad. He did. My son looked, it was the weirdest thing. I thought, my wife has given birth to my father. Anyway. Ah, you're gorgeous, says Ruth. That's your daddy. Joe, hello little fella. How are you doing? Do you want a pint? Midwife, Guinness is it? Joe, what else could I drink? I bet you want one as well. Ruth, I wouldn't mind one either. Joe, I can't believe that this child was inside your body. He's so big. Senior midwife, I know. You don't know how much they weigh until you try to push them out. Ruth, yeah. Joe, hello little boy. And we'll lay in Gaelga gut. Do you know any Irish? How are you? And then his eyes opened. Ruth, yeah, that time they opened, baby John cried. Hello, you're probably wondering who the hell is this big ugly character? Ruth, he probably knows your voice. You've been singing to him for 9 months. Joe, how are you? You're giving me a wink. Senior midwife, he's probably saying, give me a break, Dad. Joe to the baby, how are you? You all right? Are you getting cold? Ruth, his little footies are falling out. Joe, now they're both open, both eyes are open. Senior midwife, some needlework. Are you all right? Shout at me, Ruth, if you feel anything and we'll give you the gas. Ruth, oh. Senior midwife, he seems a big old boy. Nappy, his nappy won't fit. Senior midwife, his nappy won't fit. Now is not the time to worry about that. Midwife, right, come on young John. You're not as heavy as you look. 8 pounds, 13 ounces, heavy enough. Senior midwife, what do you think of that? Ruth, big. Senior midwife. Okay, now put your legs together, dear, and keep them that way for the next 6 weeks.
So, the title of that book is Saved by a Woman.
Yeah.
How did she save you?
Well, I love the title, right? There's a song by Ray LaMontagne called Trouble. And in that song he uses the word saved by a woman. I've been saved by a woman. And by the way, I wanted that song at the launch next Thursday, and I literally couldn't afford what they wanted me to pay them to have it sung. Just for my friend to sing it. Anyway, sorry, no offence. Recorded. But I would have loved it. Saved by a Woman. So the title. So there's a sort of play, because the whole Christian thing, is that we need to be saved by Jesus. No, we don't. We really don't. We don't need to be saved at all. But so, and also within the Catholic tradition, especially, Mary is the, almost like this mother God, the mother of God, who was born without the stain of original sin, making up his stuff. But this idea of, Jesus couldn't have saved us without Mary saying yes, or fiat. So it's a kind of a play on that, but it's actually a play on a real woman who really saved my life. Because, that sense of, that childhood sense, or that adolescent or young adult sense I had that no woman would be ever interested in me, not true. So, and she saved me from all of that negative self-talk, and we have had a really good, loving relationship. 31 years married. Everything. My writing career, I couldn't have done it without her. She has supported me all the way. Eventually I chucked in the teaching and set myself up as a writer, and
Here you are.
and here I am.
So, any questions or comments now from anybody on the floor?
Just where will I stop that?
Yeah, do you want, yes.
Or do you want to close?
Keep going. But I'm conscious that you should never test your audience beyond the endurance of the pants off there. The chair might be uncomfortable. You might say, "It's time to go. Will you stop asking questions?" You might have had enough. But if you want, I'm happy to stay as long as you like.
I just wonder, in the transition from believing, deeply believing, then not believing, what was your journey deep inside you?
Freedom.
What's the replacement, or
You don't need to replace what's rubbish. I nearly said another word. But it's freedom. Like when I cycle past the church on a Sunday and I see them all going to Mass, I just think, oh, thank God I've outgrown all of that nonsense.
And you did say there, thank God.
Yeah, I know. Because it's like you can't say hello in Irish, can you? How do you? And it's language, it's part of us. I still say, oh my God.
Yeah,
no, it's really hard.
And I heard you say there's a place at the birth of Jesus, so there's something, there's a connection and there's a disconnect, and I just wonder, how does that sit within one's being?
Well, I mean, if I'm at Mass, if I'm at a funeral or something like that, I find myself spitting teeth. Because like from the first word go at the Mass, they're talking about sin. I confess to you, Almighty God. And I think, would you stop it? Their whole worldview is that we're sinners and we need to be saved. It's nonsense, and I believed it.
But I'm looking for something. There's a big vacant hole there, in my opinion. There must be something that sustains us. I know from the Catholic upbringing, everyone said, "Well, what's the use? It's a waste of time. You know, why on earth am I trying to be good if there's no hereafter and all of that? Right?
Yeah.
So what drives you just to live one day at a time, your best self? You know, take the tradition out of it, take what you've been taught out of it. And for somebody who might never have had the background of religion of any sort.
Well, for me, it's freedom, it's humanity, it's trying to live my one and only life. This is my one and only life, and at the moment, the only place I'm living my one and only life is right here in this room with you people.
Yeah.
You know, this is it.
Well, my confusion is, even if I look around at the universe, and I look at, and this is what keeps me going, I have to admit, and the vastness and the beauty of it all, and it's just not, there's nothing beyond it, you know, and the human being is greater than that as far as I'm concerned, and more beautiful from inside out. Like, where are the origins, and that's not a very good word, where has it all come from? If there isn't something, I mean, did any science or man or woman put all this together? It's such a mystery to me.
Well, it's a mystery, but you know, the thing is, we don't need making up stuff to marvel in the joy and the wonder of it all. It is even more wonderful when you realise that each of us in this room is a singularity. That there's nobody in human history who's been like you. You know, nobody ever existed like you before, and nobody will ever exist like you before. And you are alive now. And now is a blink in the history of the universe. It's just a blink, you know? Because the shortness of our lives, we're like, you know, our lifespan is minuscule isn't even the word for it. You know, compared to the size and the age of the universe.
And that makes it even more, you know, in my mind, listening even to your response to that it even deepens within me the question that no matter, I might nice to say God, it's not an effort for me at the moment, but that's not an effort. But yet, there's this depth within me that says, my goodness, there's something greater than me.
Yeah.
To talk about greater than the universe. And so what's it all about? If I can just simplify it, if you want to and I don't mean to, what would you say, simplify it. Listening to the description and your response will say to going into Mass, and it's this, that and the other. For the people who do really genuinely believe in it, I would say they're as convinced about it as you are as convinced, or anyone else.
I used to be convinced of it too.
Yeah,
You know?
you know, and yet maybe I'm just trying to satisfy my own journey in life, which is a struggle all the time, and yet I cannot get away from the fact that there is out there and in here is greater than me, and I am sufficient and I am enough, but yet I didn't know man, woman alone. Together man, woman created me to a degree. Maybe the biggest lesson I had in my life, okay, I have a medical background, all right, but I remember going in the States to an exhibition of the body, and it was, I've never forgotten it. The detail of every, I did pray for every body that was dissected there, because it was something very precious. But the detail that's within us is incredible. Now, no matter how man and woman unite together in the act of love, you know, that is not solely and totally what created me into this extraordinary piece of work. You know what I mean? There's something greater, and I'm just expressing that, and I'd love to be able to
Yeah,
get an
I guess
answer.
I think though it's even more wonderful when you take the God stories out of it. You know, when you just concentrate on the facts. You know, I think scientists have this sense that we are stardust. You know, and that in the sense, you know, we'll live forever, whatever. Our cells will become something else, like whether it's pushing up trees or. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist. So you know, there are people who could answer your question better in the scientific sense. I love what's his name? The guy who used to be in the. He used to be in,
Just down to nature that the
Brian.
woman is talking about.
Brian
The
Cox.
wonderful thing is that nature. And I think religion started at the very beginning, earlier mankind, because of ignorance. They didn't know what's going on, and they were trying to get answers. If they heard the thunder, they thought there's somebody up there. There must be somebody moving furniture up there. It was just pure ignorance, not knowing, and they invented this idea. And of course, I think that the Christian religion was helped by the Roman emperor, who thought, this is a wonderful idea. If you do anything wrong and then you go to hell, this is a great way of making people do what you tell them. And he says, I want everyone in the Roman Empire to become Christian. And that was followed on afterwards. To think that then that they forced that on people, and people who didn't believe were burned at the stake. How can anyone think that that's right?
Yeah. And like Christianity is a very recent religion. You know, we go back tens of thousands of years, and that's only 2,000 years.
But it is true that there is something greater than us. You know, we live in a town, we live in a country, we live in the world, we live in a universe.
Yeah.
You know, so we are part of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And you could think in terms of energy. You know, in my work, you know, we think of an energetic field. We have a field within us and around us, and this need for some people to believe in God is a need to be connected, to feel a connection to something greater than themselves. But because a lot of us just are cut off because we're stuck in our heads, we're not feeling it in our guts.
And for some people, that is the way they do connect with that sense of a meaning beyond themselves, and that's fine. You know, the problem, of course, with religion is they're not happy just for people to have that sense of wonder and awe, or marveling at life, or you know that generations exist before them and may exist after them. Religions then try to control people. You know, oh, you can't have an abortion, or oh, you guys are gay, you can't get married. You know, like religions go from what might be good in itself, some sense of wonder and seeking for the meaning, the deeper meaning beyond what we see, but then they go into, oh, let's control everybody. You know, that's maybe not every religion does that, but I don't know any religion that doesn't.
I listened to and watched Richard Dawkins
Yeah.
and Christopher Hitchens, well, he's gone now, but it explains an awful lot. But say science doesn't have all the answers, but it's working towards the answers. Religion has no answers. It's all
Pretends it
belief.
has them all.
It's all based on belief. Whereas science is, well, I think most of us believe in science.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yes, I have one. How do you feel about spirituality? You know.
Spirituality is a very ambiguous word, right? Like the human spirit in itself is also an ambiguous word. For some, for perhaps a lot of religious people, they will think of it in terms of eternal soul and all that kind of stuff. But the, you know, psyche root of the word psychology is kind of about how you are and yourself, your feelings, your thoughts, your mental health, your emotional health. If that's what we're talking about, then the human spirit is hugely important, because you can be depressed, you can be full of hope and joy, you can feel inhibited, you can feel self-expressing, so that sense of the human spirit is real and tangible. You can see somebody whose spirit is crushed or whose spirit is alive. But the danger with the word spirituality is that it kind of gets, because it's an ambiguous word, it can get into, this sense of spirits in the sky, or, ways of thinking that are kind of otherworldly. So it's an ambiguous thing. But if by it, I don't think it's a helpful word personally, whereas the human spirit is, again, if people might think by that, your eternal soul, no, that's not my understanding of it at all, because I don't think we have one. But the human spirit, how we are, how we think, how we feel, that makes sense. Spirituality, it's just, for me, it's
People
too...
say, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual.
Yeah,
I could never understand. I still can't understand it.
Well, yes. Well, perhaps it means, like what this lady is talking about, that sense of being open to wonder and joy and awe, and that's fine. That's, if you're not, then something...
It's human nature to do that.
Yeah. But spirituality, just, I hear things like Mara's spirituality. If by that they mean, I don't know what they mean by that, to be honest with you. A way of being in the world. There was a particular way that Maras were meant to be. They were meant to kind of be like Mary in the world, obedient and attentive, and I just found the thing so forced. Rather than be yourself in the world, think for yourself, feel for yourself, express yourself, judge for yourself, act on the basis of... I never got that in the seminary. I didn't anyway.
I once gave a very controversial presentation at the Humanist Summer School, the HEI Summer School, and the title was An Organic Sense of Spirit. So what I was talking about is what I just said now, was this feeling, a sense from my, physically, from my being, that I was part of something greater than just this physical self. So, but that's not spirituality. That's just a sense of connection to something larger than myself.
But can I ask you, Jill, were you brought up as a believer?
Yes.
You
yes.
were
My parents were Anglican Protestants.
Anglican, yeah.
Yeah.
And you went to an Anglican school?
I went, well, no, it wasn't a church-run school. It was, like I grew up in England.
Yeah,
so
a state school.
It was a state school, yeah.
And
So we had assembly in the mornings. I was baptised, I was christened, I was confirmed. So in my teens I was confirmed, but then,
And then when did you leave? Is that a gradual thing?
I think that was a gradual thing, that I believed less and less.
Yeah.
I used to feel uncomfortable, and in fact, in church, I'd feel uncomfortable, and I'd feel I had to leave.
You didn't think it was true?
I think our guests, someone may
Yes.
need to go.
Yes, I think, and you may need to go. You've
No,
been
I'm not
on
in a rush. I
the
can
hot
think
chair.
of it. I think
So-
we should.
Yeah, we'll round up. So thank you very much, Jill. Thanks for very interesting. And again, details. So the launch is on Thursday at what time?
8 p.m.
8 p.m. online, and the details are there. And
Yeah.
if you want to subscribe to Joe's
Joe the Human. Joe
Yes.
the Human, not humanist, human. Joe the Human. So if you Google Joe the Human, you'll find me, and I can send you the details, or just email me, Joe Celebrant, if you want to do that, at gmail.com. And I'd love to have you there. And if you want to buy a book, but don't feel obliged,
So they're 15?
they're 15 quid, yeah.
15, yeah. So
And cheap, as
Elaine
the
is
man
going
says,
to-
at half the price.
and you might sign them.
I'd be very happy to sign
Sign
it.
them, yeah.
But please don't feel under any obligation whatsoever.
Yeah. Now this is a little tradition that we have when we have a speaker, but you can save this up until October or
Oh, it's
Christmas.
fine. It's
He was telling me earlier that he decided not to have an alcoholic drink until after he'd finished doing his audio book. So
Can you believe this? Well, firstly, thank you very much. I
There you
appreciate
go.
that. Thank you very, very much indeed. Yeah, last anecdote. I'm currently recording the audiobook of this. That's available in audiobook as well.
Oh, cool.
But it's it takes me ages. So I thought, to motivate me to do it as quickly as possible, I decided New Year's Eve or thereabouts, I won't have an alcoholic drink until I have finished the audiobook. So here's the thing, it is now early March. In this book there are 100 episodes, and on the 1st, 2nd, whatever we are, 3rd of March, I have done 11. So I reckon at best it'll be Halloween and more likely Christmas before I can open this. Thank you very much.
or you can give it to your wife.
Or I give it to my wife. No, I'm not going to.